Richard Light, please.
My family have lived in Boston for nearly 200 years now, and we have to fight for services that seem to get handed to newcomers on a plate. How can this be right?
Nigel Farage.
It's not right. It's completely unfair and it's wrong. You've got the crisis, and I met a consultant, just recently retired consultant from the Pilgrim Hospital earlier. You know, what this town has been through is a population explosion over the course of the last 15 years, which is a direct result of our membership of the European Union. It's astonishing that since 2001, the number of EU nationals living in Boston has increased officially by 467%. However, that figure is undoubtedly wrong, because that would say there are an extra 10,000 people from Eastern Europe have moved here. The figure, we suspect in truth, is nearer 20,000. Now, I think it's important that we conduct this debate along sensible, grown-up lines. This country has always been welcome to people that have come here from across the world, from different cultures, different religions, people who've claimed refugee status, and we did it, you know, since World War II. 30 to 50,000 people a year used to come into this country. The figure is now 500,000 a year, and we see our hospitals, we see primary schools where there are many kids here who can't get into primary schools, being bussed off 20 miles away. We see a benefit system designed primarily for people and families who paid in for generations, now being opened up to people who've been here literally for a few weeks. And on top of all of this, we're about to open the door on January the 1st to the whole of Bulgaria and Romania. It is not right and it is not fair, and it's about time we started to put our own people first.
Okay? Yes, sir.
The rhetoric is also negative. I work in a college where there's students from all different backgrounds, and the positives that brings, and the situation where they're prepared for real life, where they're going to meet in international businesses and all this that goes on. Why are we so negative about the fact that our children are spending time with other children from other places?
Okay.
I absolutely agree with the previous comment there, but we also have to look at the latest OECD report, which actually indicates that migrants have been beneficial to this country, not in a negative way. Mr Farage, please, Mr Farage, please stop scaremongering the majority of people. It doesn't work. Stop scaremongering. You talked about let's have a grown-up debate. Let's have a grown-up debate with facts, not scaremongering, and not Daily Mail politics.
I sat here 10 years ago on this panel with David Blunkett, just as we were about to open the door to Eastern Europe in 2004. He said there'd be a population increase of 13,000 people per year in this country. I said that was nonsense because logic said if you extend to poor people the ability to come to a rich country, they'll come in huge numbers. And in the first 2 years, 800,000 people came. That, madam, is a fact.
All right.
That's really important.
Mr Farage,
sorry, I just think it's really... Sorry. I think it's really
that
important.
Is not backed up by the figures. You are bandying about figures that don't have any... I'm talking about an OECD report.
Now you don't like
and
it, do you?
we're talking about the positive contribution and the positive financial contribution.
What about the unemployed youngsters?
All right,
what about the 1 million
let's
young people in Britain who haven't got jobs because they're now priced out of the market? What about the working class people in Britain? They're not being given a chance.
I'm a working taxpayer.
All right, Nigel, hold on. Anna Soubry.
People come here to work. They come to Boston to work, and they work in the fields, as you know. They pick the vegetables. They do the jobs. I'm from Nottinghamshire, and I'm old enough to remember the days of the migrant workers that would come over into the fields and do the jobs. Those days have gone. The real debate is about why there are so many people in our country who choose not to work. These people, I feel, as you can hear, with some passion. I don't like your tone, Mr. Farage.
They're discriminated
no,
against.
Please, you're at it again.
They're not given
interrupting.
jobs.
You talk about facts. In my constituency, your party put out a leaflet saying 29 million people from Romania and Bulgaria were going to flood into our country. Well, the population's only 27.5 million of the two of them. You don't talk. You do not talk facts. You talk prejudice.
Everyone can
That's
come.
what you talk,
Everyone
and you
can come.
scaremonger, and you put fear in people's hearts. Look, times are tough. We know that. But when times are tough, there's a danger, and history tells us when things are not good, you turn to the stranger and you blame them, and you shouldn't. That is wrong. And I'm proud of our country's history, and I'm proud that people come here. These are good people. Sometimes not all of them are.
Right.
Like people in our country.
Bring your
aren't
remarks
always
to an
good.
end,
They
because I
come
want to
here
bring
to
other
work.
people in.
You should
Thank you very
welcome
much. Person there, yes. Come on.
Is it a question of immigration or integration that we've got in this area? There seems to be so many of our foreign friends living in our area, but they live separately from ourselves. Yes, we don't, as a nation, embrace them and ask them to come and join in what we're doing, and as they don't ask us to come and join in with what they do. Having lived abroad for 5 years and lived in a country where I went there, I didn't speak the language properly. I had my eldest child in a country that I don't speak the language from. I can see how they are intimidated by us and people like the likes of Farage.
Emily Thornberry. Emily Thornberry.
I think that immigration managed properly has huge benefits for this country, and we saw this week a report from the University College London saying that immigrants in the last 10 years from the EU have paid 34% more in taxes than they have ever received in benefits. I think there is an overall benefit for our country, but it does need to be properly managed. And it does seem to me that mistakes have been made and people get anxious about that. And yeah, you're right. 10 years ago, Labour made a mistake and we didn't put in the controls that we should have done for the new accession countries. And we've learned from that, and we should make sure that we put controls in again. We've made mistakes, the current government made mistakes, and people get anxious about that. And they get anxious about... I tell you what they get anxious about, I think, is they see people and they believe them to be being exploited. They see them not being paid properly. They see them in homes of multiple occupancy, where a family house will suddenly have 8 people in it, and there'll be this hotbedding going on, and there'll be lots of cars outside. They see people, having to pay gangmasters. They see it not being properly controlled, and they see themselves being undercut, and people having to work in unsafe conditions, which no one else would agree to do, and quite rightly. Yeah. People should be paid a decent wage. They should not be exploited. They should not have to pay these sorts of rents, and there needs to be some form of control over that. And that is right. That is right, and we should not allow this to continue. And it does seem to me that this is the sort of management that we need to have.
Emily, you say manage it, and I agree with you. I agree with you. So, I want us to have a managed, sensible, open immigration policy into Britain. What I don't want us to do is to have an open door to nearly 29 million people.
I'll tell you what you want.
So would you, given that you want a managed immigration policy, would you agree with me that it is wholly irresponsible on the 1st of January next year to say to 29 million people, as many of you that want to come can? Should we manage that?
I'll tell you what you want.
Should we manage that?
Let me just tell... I'll tell you what you want.
Well, yes or no
you want to do part of this race to the bottom. I've got a note here of your policies.
You've got notes on everything, haven't you? But I mean, there you are.
When it comes to people's rights for work, right? You want to get rid of maternity leave. You want to get rid of sickness leave. I'll tell you what you want to do. You want to make sure that migrants are not allowed to come into the country, and people here have to work in the same conditions that those migrants.
All right. Now look, this is fine.
No, we're not wasting
You don't want to manage it. You want an open door.
Because the management is.
All right. Don't all talk at once, please.
Number of rights.
If you talk at once, nobody can hear a word you're saying. I'm going to go to the man in the second row there. I want to hear from some members of the audience, because we've had a lot of opposition to the things that Nigel Farage was saying. I want to hear from people who perhaps agree more with what he's saying, and then we'll have a proper debate about it. You, sir, the tie on there.
I live in a constituency near yourself, a bit further away, near Mansfield. And we do have an awful lot of Eastern Europeans in our area. And no disrespect to them half the time, but my children can't get housing. If you want to have managed immigration or migration, shouldn't you first of all put a decent infrastructure in there? Shouldn't our children be able to speak, or have these children be able to speak the English language first, and have our primary schools to teach English, not to teach Polish and all these other languages first? Let them come into this country by all means, but make sure, A, there's the infrastructure there so that our families and our children can live, and we've got jobs for our children, but sure, let them have the schooling for this country, not their country.
Well, I don't think you would obey my or you can't do the programme.
If I can cover some of the things that have been already discussed. I mean, first of all, in my view, I'll get back to your question about housing and so on. I don't think it was a mistake by the Labour government to let the Poles and others come in. The forecasts that were made were on the assumption that countries were going to open up, and they didn't. So instead of going to Germany, where the Poles would have gone, they came here because we opened up. And the interesting thing is, yes, of course, it's caused a number of social tensions. We had, during the period of very substantial migration from those countries, one of the fastest growth rates of any of the countries in Europe. They were very beneficial in all sorts of different ways. Of course, we don't have enough housing. One of the serious problems of the last decade is that housing construction has declined so substantially because of whatever political reasons at the time, and there were huge cutbacks in that area, and of course privatisation and everything else that had happened. No affordable housing has been built in this country to meet the needs of whoever is here in Boston or the people who are coming out. So it's not who are coming in. So it's not just the fact that they're coming here and they have special privileges. We simply have failed everybody who actually needs affordable housing. What's going to happen now? What's going to happen now in terms of the scaremongering that we're hearing is that we're not going to gather 29 million, even though I agree about the figure is an exaggeration anyway, because the other countries are opening up. So the Bulgarians mostly go to Germany and Austria. The Romanians mostly go to France and Italy because of the languages. Yes. And that's what's going to happen. We're going to get a certain percentage, but we're not going to get anything like what Nigel Farage is worried about. And we should actually welcome that. Remember, there are 2 million Brits who live abroad in Europe. If we want to start putting controls...
All right. On the front row here, you sir.
As a foreigner, I lived in England for quite a long time, and what's worrying me since I moved to Boston 2 years ago is the integration. I work with people in places where people don't want to speak to you English. You talk to them English and they answer you in their own languages. They don't want to learn. You try to explain things and they talk to you again in their language. The kids are suffering in Boston probably with these languages, because once my son, he's only 11 and he starts swearing in Russian.
It's very useful.
And as I'm a foreigner, I try to teach them the things which is in England. They're going to good schools and they're trying to study everything in the proper way. But unfortunately, there is a lot of effect, and the integration, it doesn't exist. And one more thing, which is I agree with Nigel, despite I'm a foreigner.
That's all right.
No, it's the system which is of the benefits. Most of them, they come here and they start claiming on kids they don't exist.
That's right.
Most of them are learning how to claim and get benefits. And I heard some of them, they say, well, there's a lot of money in England, I'm going to take as much as I can. I've been working all the time I've been here, and I've been doing well, and I worked hard. So I think the integration is a big problem, and the government has to address this issue to make it clear to people when they come to England. Yes. Otherwise, we're going to lose the identity in the British way.
Well
and it is getting lost.
Thank you, Zephaniah.
Excellent.
Be careful, my friend. It's not most of them. No, it could never be most of them. Let me just say something. My father is from Barbados. My mother is from Jamaica. I was born in Birmingham. When I moved into this area, I remember coming to Boston and standing by the church. And when you're a black person in Britain, you start to travel, people ask you, did you get a cultured clash when you go to Jamaica? You know, did you kind of have a cultural experience, some kind of cultural shock? Or when you go to Africa? When I came to Boston and I stood in the town centre near the church, I remember standing there and looking and seeing all these people that to me looked white, but I didn't hear any English. And I remember standing there thinking, what is this? Now, I'm not saying this negatively. I started to think about it and I started to understand about migration. I ended up making 2 television programmes about it. A lot of the things that people say about the houses and the services are real myths. We've had about 3 inquiries into them. For example, 1 year, a lot of local people said crime had gone up. It had actually decreased by 2%. Right? The Pilgrim Hospital said they probably, if it wasn't for the migrants, would have probably closed their maternity ward. Imagine for Bostonians, if you had to have a baby, you had to go to, I don't know, Lincoln or Peterborough. You would then be really complaining. And, you know, when I made the film, I remember a farmer took me to one side and he said to me, Benjamin, I used to be a good old-fashioned racist. You know, he was honest to me. He said, I would never talk to black people and I would never talk to foreigners. But I tried to get local people to work on my land. And he said he couldn't. And he said he couldn't even get his own family to work on his land. And he would prefer to employ local people, but he couldn't. I understand the problem with integration. There are very few foreigners here now, very few Eastern Europeans. I'm just guessing that. On the whole, they don't get involved in the political and cultural life of the area. But let me explain something to you. When my parents came to the Caribbean, they settled in Aston and Handsworth, and they didn't go anywhere else. They didn't integrate either. It takes a bit of time for you to get confidence. It takes time for you to settle and have financial freedom and confidence to move on.
Okay. A lot of people come in on this.
The panel talk about scapegoating and anxiety, but my anxiety to the migrants is a reality. Now, 2 weeks for a doctor's appointment, 4.5 hours in A&E, way to be seen.
But you get that all over the country.
Never had that 10 years ago.
I think it is fair. I mean, we know that there are particular difficulties when it comes to funding in Boston, and I know that the local schools, for example, make a very good case that because so many children don't have English as their first language, they actually need more money. So I'd be the first to put my...
The government has actually given them a very large
amount of money. And
88% of parents get their first choice school?
Yeah, no, that wasn't the point.
I wish in my borough they had 88%
The point I was going to make was we know that there are problems with the funding for local authorities, and I know that that's something that's been taken up by the local MP and it's been taken up in the DCLG as well. But I would also say this: yes, we do have to control immigration, we do have to manage things properly, and we do have to make sure that when people come here, frankly, they don't take the mick, they don't exploit our system. And that's one of the things the immigration bill will do.
But how can you manage it if you have an open border?
No, because Vicky's made that argument very well. She's explained it, and you are putting fear into people's hearts when people don't need to have that fear. They really don't.
The woman here on the right. Yes, you.
Yeah, it isn't a them and us. It's about integration, but the integration takes time. The town needs money. We are waiting too long for doctors' appointments. There are all these things. But the other thing is, as a councillor, I'm finding with some of the young youngsters that are coming, the young Eastern European teenagers that are coming to the college where I work, that I'm having lots of problems with them with anxieties, because when they come to this country, their parents don't speak English. They go to school to learn English. They end up dealing with the council. the gas board, telephone people. They end up becoming the adults within the house. By the time they get to their teenage years, they're then having problems with panic attacks, anxiety. They've lost their childhood. The government should be looking at what happens when we have the immigrants coming in. Fine, there's nothing wrong with the immigrants coming in. That's great. We need them. We want them. They integrate well. We have too many in Boston because we can't cope. The infrastructure cannot cope. Doctors, hospitals, schools cannot cope.
The man up there I'd like to hear from some more members of the audience. The man up there on the right, on the far right there, yes. That's not a political statement, it's geographical.
The original questioner mentioned newcomers. And immediately, Nigel Farage assumes that to mean Eastern Europeans. Well, my wife and myself are newcomers, but we come from Northamptonshire.
Wow. I'm a newcomer.
We are also using the local doctors, and we also have to wait. But we're not blaming the Eastern Europeans because we have to wait.
Well, yeah, OK, sir. You know, hopefully from Northampton you've integrated fairly quickly here, I'm not sure.
No,
I'm not so sure.
It's no different.
But the basic point I made, that the official figure shows that the population of EU migrants in Boston has gone up by 500% since 2001, and that's an underestimate. That figure holds. And of course that puts pressure on schools, hospitals and local services.
It's because
But it would put pressure on
because
if they
it's
came from
such a lovely
Northampton.
place to live.
Yeah, but it wouldn't.
You in the check shirt in the third row.
Yeah, I think there's a big problem with immigrants coming and taking seasonal jobs, but I think they must come on a one-way ticket because there's not many people going back after the jobs are finished.
And is the work still seasonal?
Sorry?
Is the work still largely seasonal?
It is round here. I mean, I work on a...
Has it not spread now?
Sorry?
Has it not spread to the 12 months?
Not really, no. Not on the farms and things.
And
cabbage picking.
Can I just say, it makes,
Yes.
I mean, it does unfortunately make sense because, and I'm sure you're right, and that is because going back home doesn't give them jobs that they would like to have, because Europe has been in a bit of a mess and crisis. So we have, certainly in the UK, seen lots of people come who would have normally gone back, either seasonally or pretty quickly after they made some money here and returned because their economies were doing reasonably well. But that has stopped for a while. But hopefully, what you might see is lots of people leaving if the Polish economy does as well as, continues to do as well as it's done recently. So it may happen. So unfortunately, we've been hit. And that's why there's so much anti-sentiment, sort of negative sentiment about it, by the fact that Europe has done so poorly economically. But I have just one little case study to tell you and why we need to really worry about what Nigel is saying. And that is Greece. I'm Greek myself and came here to study and then stayed. But what's been going on in Greece is that it has become the entry point for all the immigrants who are trying to come into Europe. And the population has increased exponentially. It's just extraordinary what's been going on. And what we have there is a strange system where the Constitution says everyone has to go, or the kids have to go to Greek schools. So they have to learn Greek. And within a couple of years, they're Greek. So they have the problem that the lady here talked about, which is that the kids then take over in a way, but they're the Greeks and the parents have to adjust. What has happened, of course, because of all these immigrants coming in, is that the nationalistic tendencies have increased hugely, and we ended up with a party which took quite a lot of seats in government, which has now had all its leaders arrested because they basically were inciting violence against the immigrants. And that has become a serious issue in Europe, and it's not just in Greece, but it's elsewhere too. What we really need to watch here is that we don't end up in the same situation of blaming the foreigners for whatever it is that may be wrong with our own economy. It is...
I just want to remind people that you people here know that 400 years ago, people left from this Boston.
Yes.
And they migrated to the United States of America to form another Boston.
Yep.
Nigel, you should go on a programme called Who Do You Think You Are? Because I'm sure that you will find that you've got migrants in your family.
And actually, Benjamin, what is really interesting about this debate is everyone around this table says we should have a managed migration policy into this country, which I completely and utterly agree with. But the elephant in the room, And what the three parties won't talk about is the fact that if you're a member of the European Union, which has now admitted very poor countries, you have no management at all. There are no restrictions on the numbers of people coming to Britain next year from Romania and Bulgaria, and that is irresponsible, stupid, and against the interests of our own people in this country. That's the point.
I need to take one more point from the woman in the centre there.
I still think you're a migrant.
Undoubtedly.
No,
undoubtedly.
Yes.
I'd like to go back to what the lady said before about our youth not wanting to work and not wanting these jobs. Is it just coincidence that in 2004 to now, our youth unemployment has doubled?
Exactly.
Is it just coincidence?
Not in Boston.
Exactly.
I'm talking as a whole.
Can I say, I think there's something, I think in terms of youngsters, I think that all local jobs should be advertised in the job centre, and I don't think that all of them are, and get to not to give youngsters a chance.
Not in this country. 800,000 jobs were not advertised in this country, only abroad.
Yeah, and I'm saying that they should be advertised. I think they should be advertised in the job centres here, and if people want to advertise them elsewhere, that's fine. And you might then start getting a bit of a break-up of the workforce, as opposed to, you know, there being an advertisement somewhere and people coming over, which I don't think is right. The other question is, and I think the future is with the youngsters, and some of the things that people have been saying about the schools is really important. In my area, in my part of inner London, we have people from all over the world come to my area, and a lot of the mothers don't speak English, and we started teaching English as a second language attached to the school. So the mums would come in with the kids. The kids, frankly, don't have any problem learning English. I mean, there was a boy arrived from Korea, and in 6 months, having not spoken any English at all, he's now speaking it fluently, but his mother was a different matter. And the school, it was a really good school, set up classes attached to the school. And in that way, because the mums wanted to be able to talk to the teachers, and that was their motivation. And in that way, we can work towards some sort of integration. But I think you're right. The key to this is youngsters.
Can I just ask you one thing before we move on to another question? Why did Labour, according to Peter Mandelson, send out search parties for people to come to this country to work in 2004?
I think that the point was that at a time of a booming economy, not all the vacancies could be filled, and so yeah, you know, we looked around, and as I started off, you know, managed migration can be of huge benefit to a country. And please don't forget, we've been talking about the National Health Service. It would be nowhere without people coming to this country and working in the National Health Service.
Okay, we'll move on.